Okay, so this is the cerebrum. These are the cerebelli. दो cerebelli होती है, cerebellum होती है, and then the brainstem. And brainstem किसमें spinal cord में continue होता है. So यहाँ पे like I said before, यहाँ पे दोनों vertebral arteries आएगी. Vertebral arteries दोनों pons में से मिल जाएगा, because pons में सब मिलता है. And then so what is this? So this is the vertebral artery, and this is the basilar artery. So this will now go into the cerebrum and give the last part of the vertebrobasilar system, that is PCA, posterior cerebral. cerebrum में है ना, इसलिए posterior cerebral artery. तो this will be like मतलब completely, क्योंकि ये पूरा है ना, तो all this is posterior cerebral artery. तो ये पूरा posterior cerebral artery है. And then basilar artery से cerebellum में जाएगा, because these are adjacent to each other, no? तो इसीलिए पहले तो superior cerebellar जाएगा ऊपर, and then inferior cerebellar जाएगा नीचे. So this is the superior cerebellar artery, but we don't have anything to do with this. So just focus on inferior cerebellar artery. तो inferior cerebellar artery में फिर से दो parts हैं. That is पहले तो anterior inferior cerebellar आएगा और एक आएगा posterior जो पीछे से जाएगा. So this is anterior inferior cerebellar artery आएगा, and this is posterior inferior cerebellar artery आएगा. And then the last branch comes from the vertebral artery जो पीछे spinal cord में जाएगा. That will be anterior spinal artery. मतलब दोनों मिल जाएंगे, जैसे basilar में मिला था, दोनों merge हो जाएंगे, and then this will form anterior spinal artery, ASA. Okay, so this is the vertebrobasilar system. So what all did we see? पहले vertebral arteries जाएंगे in the medial oblongata, and then they merge together in the pons forming the basilar artery. Basilar artery gives the posterior cerebral artery in the midbrain, and cerebellum को they give one ica, and the other one is pica. And then vertebral arteries merge together and go into the spinal cord with the anterior spinal artery. So now we know this is the medial side. Medial मतलब जो बीच में होते हैं, and this is the lateral side. This is the other lateral side of the total nervous system. So the medial side जो बीच में से जाती है, and the lateral sides. There are two lateral sides and one medial side. So now we are going to see so now the same thing I've written down. To medial, lateral, and here are the parts of the brain, the parts of the nervous system. So midbrain, pons, and medulla, medial side and lateral side. So now let's see what are the arteries that go through these. So midbrain में medial में क्या होता है? Posterior cerebral artery. So let's write PCA, and lateral में also posterior cerebral artery. So PCA again. And then pons. Pons में medially what can you see? Basilar artery. So write down basilar here, and then laterally you can see ica here, because it goes like this. So ica, as I told you, only the inferior cerebellar arteries matter. The superior cerebellar artery, let's just keep it aside for now. So inferior cerebellar artery में जो pons में जाती है, that is the ica. So write down ica here, and then medulla. Medulla में medially it is the ASA, anterior spinal artery, and on the lateral side it is pica. See, pica is going downstairs down into the medial oblongata. So pica. You can also write down vertebral artery, because the strokes in vertebral artery are much more common than pica when there is a lesion in the lateral side of the medial oblongata. So medial side of the midbrain PCA, and lateral also PCA, pons, basilar, and ica. Medial oblongata में anterior spinal artery on the medial side and pica on the lateral side. Okay, so now let's look at this mnemonic. So the mnemonic, so first, as we know, there are the number of cranial nerves are 12. There are totally 12 cranial nerves, and the nuclei, जिसके nuclei है, those are only 3 to 12. As we know, 1 and 2, there are no nuclei. There are no nuclei for the cranial nerves 1 and 2. That is, the olfactory and optic nerves don't have any nuclei. So the nuclei are present only from the cranial nerves number 3 to 12. So you can know it this way: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can just, for the sake of remembering, 1, 2, 3, 4, because there are no nuclei for 1 and 2, just cancel it down. 3, 4, and pons में आते हैं 5, 6, 7, 8, medulla में 9, 10, 11, and 12. Yeah, so now we need to see what are the cranial nerves that come on the medial side, and what are the cranial nerves, the nuclei of the cranial nerves that come on the lateral side. Medial, lateral. So for that, there is a mnemonic. For medial side, just note down all the numbers that can be divided with 12. So those are 3, 4, 6, and 12. Why? Because 12 by 3, you can get it as 4. 12 by 4, 3. 12 by 6, 2. 12 by 12, 1. Can you divide 12 by 5? No. 12 by 8? No. 12 by 10 or 9? No. You cannot divide 12 by those numbers. The only numbers which can be divided by 12 are 3, 4, 6, and 12. So all these numbers which are divided by 12 come on the medial side. So now we can purely write 3, 4, 6, and 12. So 3, 4. Medial side, 6 here, and 12 here. Yeah, so now we know what are the nuclei that come on the medial side. 3, 4, 6, and 12. The numbers divisible by 12. Now on the lateral side, whatever is remaining. 5 here, 7, 8 is an exception because it comes here. 8, just write 8 here down, and then 9, 10, and 11. 12 comes here. So now we know all the nuclei. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. What come on the lateral side? What come on the medial side? Another exception is 5, because 5 has trigeminal, because 5 is the trigeminal nerve. So there are 3 branches of it. So just consider it very large. Therefore, 5 comes all the way here. All midbrain, pons and medulla. Everywhere there is cranial nerve number 5. And 7, since it is facial nerve is also everywhere. It comes both on the medial side as well as the lateral side. So this and 5 and 8 again. These 3 are the only exceptions in this rule, in the 12 rule, on the medial and lateral side of rule. Okay, so now let's look at the second mnemonic. So the second mnemonic is about what happens when the location is disrupted. I mean, when there is a lesion. Lesion means any kind of damage on the medial side, depending on the location, and what happens when there is a lesion on the lateral side. So when there is a lesion in the medial side, on the medial side of midbrain, okay, first let's see what happens whenever there is a lesion anywhere, midbrain, pons, medulla, anywhere, on the medial side, two M's are affected. That is the motor tract, the main motor tract of our body, which is corticospinal tract. So whenever there is a problem with our motor tract, what happens? We can either have paralysis, like any kind of plagia, hemiplegia, paraplegia, all kinds of plagias, and motor nuclei. That is, motor nuclei is nothing but whatever the nuclei run on the medial side, those are the motor nuclei. So the motor nuclei are going to be affected, and the motor tract, that is the corticospinal tract, is going to be affected. And whenever there is a lesion on the sideways tract, that is the lateral tract, we are going to have the S's. So the first S is spinothalamic tract, which is the main sensory tract. So what? The main sensory tract, that is the spinothalamic tract, which gives sensations like pain and temperature. So these are this is one of the main sensory tracts in our body. What? Spinothalamic. So that is the first tract that is going to be affected. And second is sensory nuclei, the nuclei that run on the lateral side. And the third is sympathetic chain, which is only present in the medulla oblongata. Sympathetic chain is nothing but which gives the sympathetic sensations to the cervical ganglion. Whenever there is a lesion, it presents with Horner's syndrome. So you know Horner's syndrome, it is nothing but ptosis, meiosis, and absence of sweating. That is Horner's syndrome. So since the sympathetic chain is gone, there won't be any sympathetic effects. Therefore, you lose the ability to sweat, and you'll have meiosis and ptosis. So now let's see what happens when the particular places are affected, particularly parts are affected. So when there is a lesion in the midbrain, on the medial side, as we know, PCA is going to be affected. The main thing that is going to be affected, only whenever there is a lesion in the medial side, just look at these two M's only. You don't have to look at these three S's at all. Whenever there is a lesion on the medial side, the two M's are only going to be affected. So the first one is motor, corticospinal. So yeah, another one is whenever the body is affected, like if the corticospinal tract is affected, or if the spinothalamic tract, which is nothing but it gives sensations to the whole body, not the face. So whenever the body is affected, the effect is going to be contralateral. So if there is a lesion on the right side of the cerebrum anywhere, the effect is going to be seen on the left side of our body. So contralateral. Whereas whenever there is an issue with the face, that is the nuclei, motor nuclei or sensory nuclei, any of these nuclei damaged, if any of these nuclei are damaged, the effect is going to be on the ipsilateral side, that is on the same side. So midbrain lesions are going to present with corticospinal, motor, therefore contralateral, hemiplegia. Hemi, since it is only on the one side, the other side, the opposite side. And motor nuclei, the motor nuclei present in the midbrain are 3 and 4. Cranial nerve 3 and 4 palsies. On the ipsilateral side, just focus on the cranial nerve 3 because this is one of the main ocular nerves, that is the oculomotor nerve. So we are going to have cranial nerve 3 and 4 palsy on the ipsilateral side. Whereas on the lateral side, if there is a damage to the midbrain on the lateral side, the first thing that is going to be affected is contralateral, loss of pain and temperature. And sensory nuclei, since there are no sensory nuclei on the lateral side of the midbrain, there won't be any effects. And sympathetic chain is not seen here. It is only present in the medial oblongata. So the second one is pons. So whenever there is a lesion in the pons, on the medial side, what is affected? The basilar artery. And here what is affected? Corticospinal tract. So first one is going to be again contralateral hemiplegia. And the nuclei that are going to be affected, motor nuclei, are 6 and 7. Since I told you facial nerve is everywhere on the medial side and on the lateral side, therefore we are going to have cranial nerve 6 and 7 palsies. So 6 is nothing but abductor nerve. Therefore, you'll have a problem abducting your eye. That is the lateral vision, lateral side. Lateral rectus muscle is going to be affected. And facial nerve, we know facial nerve has many motor functions. So that is going to be affected. And if the pons presents on the lateral side, if the pons is affected on the lateral side, that is lateral side. Therefore, ICA, the lesion is going to be spinothalamic first. Therefore, contralateral, loss of pain and temperature. And we are going to have sensory nuclei issues. Therefore, there are many nuclei here. So we can see, okay, wait. So 5 and 7. Therefore, cranial nerves 5 and 7 palsies again. On the ipsilateral side, as I told you, face is always all affected on the ipsilateral side. Therefore, ipsilateral side. So 5 is nothing but trigeminal nerve and 7 is nothing but facial nerve. And then medulla. On the medial side, medulla is supplied by anterior spinal artery. Therefore, the lesions are going to be, first of all, motor, cortico. Therefore, contralateral hemiplegia. And second one is motor nuclei. So the motor nuclei are only 12. Therefore, cranial nerve 12 palsy, ipsilateral side. And lateral medulla supplied by pica or vertebral artery. The first one is going to be spinothalamic. Therefore, contralateral, loss of pain and temperature. Cranial nerves, the sensory nuclei are 8, 9, 10 and 11. And also 5. 5 is also going to be there. Therefore, did you know that the cranial nerves 9, 10 and 11, the nuclei of all these is called nuclei ambiguous. The nuclei, they combine together forming the nuclei ambiguous. Therefore, cranial nerve nuclei ambiguous is damaged. This, I mean, there is no particular thing. You just have to remember the functions of 9, 10, 11 separately. All of them together, it is called nucleus ambiguous. So we are going to have cranial nerves 8 to 11 palsies on the ipsilateral side again. But the thing is, you're going to also have sympathetic chain is also going to be affected. Therefore, Horner's syndrome on the ipsilateral side. As I told, face. Horner's syndrome is nothing but on the face. Therefore, ipsilateral side, ipsilateral Horner's syndrome is also going to be presented here. I don't have place. Okay. Okay, so now there are only 5 syndromes that we have to know for FMGA. That is, when there is a lesion on the medial side of the midbrain, it can either be Weber's syndrome or Benedict syndrome. I'll explain it to you later. And if there is a lesion on the medial side of the pons, it is called Millard-Gubler syndrome. Medial Millard-Gubler syndrome. And on the medulla, it is called medial medullary syndrome. And if it is on the lateral side, it is called lateral medullary syndrome. Also called Wallenberg, since there are 2 L's, lateral and again medullary. There are so many L's, so you can remember it that way. So what are the 5 things that we have to know? Weber syndrome, Benedict syndrome, Millard-Gubler syndrome, that is on the medial side of the pons, medial medullary syndrome, and lateral medullary syndrome, also called Wallenberg syndrome. So now let's look at the symptoms, or what happens whenever these occur. So lateral medullary, let's come from the last like this. So lateral medullary syndrome first. What is the artery that is affected? So lateral medullary syndrome. So we know whenever there is an issue on the lateral side of the medulla oblongata, lateral side, what is affected? The vertebral artery or the pica. Pica, vertebral artery, medulla, lateral. Therefore, the arteries affected are vertebral artery more than pica. There is a stroke on the vertebral artery more, the percentage is more as compared to pica. And the symptoms, we know lateral, whenever there is an issue on the lateral side of the medulla, look at the S's, all the 3 S's, because the sympathetic chain is also is only seen in medulla. So we have to consider this. So the first one we are going to have is spinothalamic, that is the sensory. Therefore, contralateral loss of pain and temperature. The second one is sensory nuclei. So what are the nuclei present on the lateral side of the medulla? 5 and 7. Oh, I'm sorry. Medulla 8, 9, 10, 11. Therefore, we are going to have ipsilateral issues with the cranial nerves 8 to 11. 9, 10, and 11 are called nuclei ambiguous. And the third one is we are going to have ipsilateral Horner's syndrome. Because why? Because the sympathetic chain is affected. So this is going to happen on the lateral lateral medullary or the Wallenberg syndrome. The second one is medial medullary. So whenever there is an issue in the medial medullary medulla, what is the artery that is going to be affected? ASA, the anterior spinal artery. Therefore, the artery affected is ASA. And the symptoms are, the first one is motor, because it is on the medial side. Therefore, motor corticospinal. Therefore, we are going to have contralateral hemiplegia and the motor nuclei. What are the motor nuclei present on the medullary side? Medulla, medial, 12. Therefore, we are going to have ipsilateral cranial nerve 12 palsy. Then the Millard-Gubler syndrome, that is the medial pons. So what is the artery that is affected when the lesion is on the medial side of the pons? Basilar. Therefore, basilar. And the symptoms are going to be, because this is medial, therefore look at the M's. The first one is contralateral hemiplegia. And the second one is the motor nuclei. Pons, motor nuclei, medial, 6 and 7. Therefore, we are going to have ipsilateral cranial nerve 6, cranial nerve 7 palsies. Yeah. So these are the first 3, and then Weber and Benedict. The last 2 are Weber syndrome and Benedict syndrome. So both of them occur when midbrain is affected on the medial side. The difference is that, as we know, medial midbrain, the artery affected is PCA. In fact, lateral also it will be PCA only, but let's just focus on the medial side, PCA. Therefore, the artery affected is going to be PCA for both, because both are medial midbrain lesions. So PCA. But the difference is that this is going to be superficial. Superficial in the sense, let me explain. And this is going to be deep. So the problem is going to be when Weber's syndrome occurs when the lesion is at the superficial location, on the superficial side of the PCA. Therefore, just at the ends of the PCA is affected. But the deeper you go, that is, as we know here, we are going to have the subcortical regions. That is the red nucleus, subthalamus, all these. Thalamus, red nucleus, substantia nigra, and so many more. Basal ganglia, the main one of the main things. Basal ganglia. All these are going to be on the deeper side of the PCA. Therefore, if the lesion is on the deeper side, the subcortical regions, that is, these are going to be affected. Whereas superficial, only the artery, wait, let me tell. So PCA superficial. The first thing that you're going to see, since it is medial, midbrain medial, therefore motor corticospinal and motor nuclei. So the corticospinal is going to be contralateral loss of hemiplegia, contralateral hemiplegia, and then the motor nuclei. The cranial nerve nuclei present on the midbrain, on the medial side of the midbrain, are 3 and 4. Therefore, we are going to have ipsilateral 3 and 4 palsies. Only these are going to be affected in Weber syndrome. In fact, 4, yes, it is going to happen, but this is the main one, because this is the oculomotor nerve, which is the main vision, main ocular nerve. Therefore, this is going to be the main focus for this Weber's syndrome. Therefore, we know oculomotor nerve is nothing but we are going to have so many ocular symptoms, like we won't be able to look at the medial side, and then up, down, all these stuff is going to squint eyes, diplopia, ptosis, all these is going to happen with cranial nerve 3 palsy. Whereas Benedict's, it is deeper. Benedict, D for deep. Therefore, deeper PCA. So when deeper, first of all, we are going to have the same one: contralateral hemiplegia and cranial nerve 3 and 4 palsy, ipsilateral. This is going to be present anywhere, but the third one, the addition, is going to be, since the subcortical regions are going to be affected, the main thing we are going to focus on are basal ganglia and the red nucleus. Therefore, basal ganglia is affected. Therefore, we are going to see athetosis. Athetosis, since this is body. Athetosis is nothing but a finger moving like this and the slow ringing movements. I mean, without our knowledge, of course. This is, since this is the body, it is going to be contralateral, and caudate nucleus is going to be affected. Therefore, we are also going to have contralateral chorea. Chorea you can see with rheumatic fever also. Rheumatic fever and Huntington's disease. Sydenham, here you will see Sydenham chorea and Huntington's also. These are the extra points. Okay, contralateral chorea. Caudate. Co. Therefore, whenever the lesion, there is an issue with the caudate nucleus, we are going to have chorea. So this is all about Weber's and Benedict syndrome. So this was all about the vertebrobasilar system. That is, the vertebral and basilar arteries are affected. When this system is affected, it is called the vertebrobasilar system. Whereas when the cortical system is affected, so the cortical is nothing but cortex. There are, we know, 2 cerebral hemispheres, and then the cerebellum comes here, and then the brainstem. So we know these are the 2 cortices. So the cortices have 3 main arteries: anterior cerebral artery, middle cerebral artery, and posterior cerebral artery. So here we are going to have anterior cerebral artery. This is the location, and then middle cerebral artery is going to be the whole thing, this whole thing, and this is going to be the posterior cerebral artery. Yeah. So when you need to remember this diagram, this is called homunculus, brain homunculus of the brain. So just remember this diagram. Here comes the leg, here comes the arm, face, and speech, and here comes the vision. So whenever there is a lesion with the PCA, we are going to have vision issues, as we have seen here for Weber's with Weber's and Benedict syndrome. We are going to have third nerve, that is the ocular nerve palsy. So therefore, we are going to have vision issues. And whenever there is a lesion in the ACA, we are going to have an issue in the leg. So the first thing that is going to be affected, actually the only thing that is going to be affected is the leg. And we know it is always the opposite with cortex. Therefore, always contralateral side is going to be affected. So if the lesion is on the right side of the brain, the left leg is on the right side of the ACA, the left leg is going to be affected. Similarly, with MCA, it is going to be contralateral, arm, face, and speech. These are the 3 things that are going to be affected. And PCA, we have already seen with Weber's and Benedict's. So you just have to remember ACA, the contralateral leg, because of this, the homunculus. MCA, contralateral arm, face, and speech, and then vision. Yeah. This is the cortical system.